If white holes exist, could we ever see one? Do SETI researchers have access to Vera Rubin? What is the best way for the universe to end? And in Q&A Plus, will the Earth eventually become tidally locked to the sun? All this and more in this question show. It's time for the question show. Your questions, my answers, as always, wherever you are across my channel. If a question pops into your brain, just write it down. I'll gather them up and I will answer them here. All right, let's get to the questions. Fester all day. If a civilization isn't detected by SETI, did it even exist? All those poor potential people. Sure. Yeah. If we don't detect a civilization, either indirectly or directly, like if we don't detect them sending a signal at us, or if we don't detect the leaked radiation from their television broadcasts, they're still there. You know, tree falls in the forest. Nobody hears it. Doesn't make a sound. Yes, it makes the sound of a tree falling. But, you know, there's this idea in SETI about sort of quiet aliens versus loud aliens, that advanced civilizations will probably fall into these two categories. So the quiet ones are going to be the ones that just chill out at their home planet, that they, instead of using radio transmissions, they switch to fiber optic. They are concerned about being discovered by other civilizations, and so they go quiet. You know, this is the sort of dark forest idea. While loud aliens are going to be broadcasting, but are going to be conquering. They're going to be taking over other star systems. You know, they're going to go to a star system. They're going to manufacture von Neumann probes. They're going to send those von Neumann probes at close to the speed of light. They're going to be extracting the resources from that home star system. They're going to be growing their empire. And it's the kind of thing that you would be able to detect. And so we won't detect the quiet aliens. We will only detect the loud ones. And so, you know, people always ask, like, why do aliens have to be loud? Like, why do aliens have to be like conquering large amounts of space? They don't. And if they don't, then we won't detect them. But if a civilization doesn't want to expand, then that leaves room to the ones that do. And like the Borg. And so it only takes one to go full Borg. Tomics, if white holes were to exist in this universe, would they be detectable? Yeah, theoretically. So, you know, we still don't entirely know if a white hole is actually feasibly possible. You know, it is as an offshoot of the math that sort of work with black holes. And essentially that if you just turn one number negative or positive, I forget which way it goes, then you get a white hole, right? And so while a black hole is sort of accumulating material, then a white hole theoretically should be spewing out material. Maybe black holes and white holes are connected. We don't know, right? But it is almost certainly just a mathematical construct. There's no reason to believe this is a thing that actually exists. Just because you can do the math for something doesn't mean that thing is real. But if white holes do exist, then they theoretically would be firing out energy. And that's a thing that you would detect. And so astronomers have considered that you could do scans of the sky with things like Vera Rubin, for example, would be perfect for this kind of thing, that you'd be looking for a certain wavelength of light. You'd be looking for a certain brightness, certain change in brightness as radiation was pouring out of a white hole. And that's the kind of thing that you could theoretically detect. So, you know, it all depends on whether or not these are real. And if they are real, then there are plans. There have been ideas on how you might detect them. Visto Tutti, does SETI have access to the Vera Rubin data stream, or does NSA filter out all the aliens in the data? Everybody has access to the Vera Rubin data stream. All of it. There is no limit. There's no filter. There's no one is stopping anyone from doing anything they want at all, except for locating the positions of US military satellites. The Department of Energy is filtering those out. But apart from that, everything else is in there, especially the alien spacecraft. So no, nobody is filtering out the aliens in the data that we know of. But no, like this is like, if there was an alien armada on its way to Earth, and you know, they were reflecting sunlight off of the sun, or they were firing their thrusters to decelerate themselves, then they would be visible. Vera Rubin would probably be the telescope that would detect them first. You know, someone right now can make a filter that will look for the kinds of things that an alien attack fleet would give off on its way to the solar system. Now, the challenge is coming up with the right filter. Like, how do you describe that perfect filter that tells you that you're seeing an alien attack fleet and not just another supernova? That's your challenge. But there is nobody stopping anybody from looking for this kind of stuff in the data. You want to find aliens? You want to find UFOs? Fill your boots. Like this is the part, like I know you already know this, Vista, but this is the part that just kind of kills me, is like people think that this information, no, go use ChatGPT or go use Claude, have it teach you how to connect up with the API of these data brokers, write code, come up with a really cool interface that shows you all the stuff that you're interested in the Vera Rubin data, right? It's all there. It's ready to go. You have exactly the same tools that the astronomers have. There's no difference in what the regular person can access and what the astronomers access. It is all the same, all publicly available. Anyone can discover the next asteroid that is on its way to the Earth. You just have to create the right query to look through the Vera Rubin data. It's time to shout out all the new $5 patrons and above. Andrew Stevenson, Matuz Welgos, Morton Richard Vork, Tina Sjogren, Bob Patey, Robert Glinka, Texas Knight, Stephen Fleetwood, Leon, and Maris Williams. Join the club at patreon.com/universe today. Sitahedron. So are we going to trust the most corrupt government in modern history is honest about what is filtering from the data? Like, how can you control this? 800,000 alerts every single night. It's expected that that number is going to go up to probably 7 million alerts a night once the enough data has been gathered by Vera Rubin that it's starting to really detect changes from night to night. Yeah, if you know the positions of your satellites, then you can scrub them from the data because those are a known quantity. They have whatever, 100 satellites. They need to make sure that they're not revealed in the data. But how do you scrub unknown things from 7 million events that have happened that night? So you are suggesting a level of competence by the government, any government, this government, to be able to scrub through that information and to be able to clean that up. Like, what a make-work project. Can you imagine? You're going to have to take all 7 million alerts that are happening every single night. You're having to run really complicated state-of-the-art tools. You're going to have astronomers in the tens of thousands looking through and filtering out this stuff every night in a way that is undetectable to the astronomical community. Because remember, you can go on to Vera Rubin, you can say, alert me when a supernova goes off that I can see with my telescope. And then you get an alert, and then you take your telescope, you look at that galaxy, and you're like, yep, there's a supernova there, right? So how do you still allow this stuff to be in essentially real time, within seconds of when it was detected by Vera Rubin and then made available to the astronomical community, and at the same time be able to filter out the stuff that you want to keep secret, like the aliens, which are random, right? So yeah, if you know where your satellites are, you know exactly where they are in the field of view, then you can remove them. And so they're going to be removing the positions of their reconnaissance satellites. But apart from that, there is just no possible way, unless they are incredibly competent. But I think those run counter. So I don't know how you would do this. Melinda Green, would you prefer the universe end? So I'm like, obviously, we won't be around for the future of the universe. We won't be around for the future of the Earth beyond, let's say, 100 years. I'm 54 now. Like, what have I got left? 30 years, maybe, if I'm lucky. And yet, instead of us thinking about making sure that we eat healthy food and keeping track of our dental hygiene, we have these obsessive thoughts about the deep future of the universe. What'll happen when the sun dies? What'll happen when all of the stars are plucked out of the Milky Way? What'll happen when every dead star is at the center of its own equivalent of the Buddhist void? And we have these sort of melancholy thoughts about that future. And so, Like, what are your possibilities? The one possibility is that just goes on forever, that all of the white dwarfs eventually, there's one idea that white dwarfs can potentially just explode at the end of their lives, that they're essentially decaying in their cores and they're building up antimatter inside their cores and they just detonate is one possibility. But like, take a 10 to the power of like 1100 years and then all of those white dwarfs would all die. That's one possibility. Or that protons can decay. And so eventually all of the particles in a star will one by one decay away and the star will just melt away. But even if it doesn't, that Hawking radiation could cause white dwarfs to decay at like 10 to the power of 100 years, like a Google years from now. Everything will decay because of Hawking radiation. In the same way that, like, not just black holes, but everything, anything made of mass will decay away into Hawking radiation. And so the entire universe will just be a soup of radiation. There will be no usable heat that anyone can do any work with. That's the heat death of the universe. The universe will be cold and dead and accelerating apart. But it'll still be here as opposed to it ending. And so in the sort of unreasonable choices that we have to consider, is that better? Is a cold, dead universe better than a universe that ends, that stops existing at some point into the future? I mean, it is, from our perspective, there is no difference. But yet, we have this emotional connection. I would still prefer the universe, the cold, dead, forever expanding universe, over the one that comes to a screeching halt and just ends, that snaps out of existence at some point into the future. So yeah, even though both are uncomfortable to think about, I would still prefer the one that says, well, so there's still a chance, right? That's the one that I prefer. Yeah. Yeah. It's a funny thing with our brains, how we will have these emotional reactions to things which are purely theoretical. Instead of us focusing on the things, that really matter, we think about the sort of horrible possibilities for the dark, deep future. I don't know. There's some psychologist theory in here somewhere. Did you know that you can watch the same video with no ads and get a bonus question over on Patreon completely for free? We call that Q&A Plus. This week's bonus question: will the Earth eventually become tidally locked to the sun? And I'll put a link in the show notes. All right, those are all the questions that we had this episode. Thank you, everyone who asked your questions into the YouTube comments, everybody who had joined me for the live show. I'm going to talk about my top 100 movies list, but first, I'd like to thank our patrons. Thanks to Abe Kingston, Andrea Petretti, Brian Bodie, Caradwin, Chuck Hawkins, Commander Baylock, Dark Finger, David Gilton, and David Matz, Enthrall Reading Math for Toddlers, Evan.Pro, James Clark, Jerry Mattern, Jim Burke, Marcel Smith, Michael Purcell, NASA Ocean Guy, Nordspace, OneStepFromAnimals.org. Please follow my nephew at VBrick6994, Renkaidu, Richard Williams, Sean Sargent, Stephen Fallon, Monthly, Team 49, Tilsubs Canada, Vlad Shevlin, Wolfgang Klotz, Zelda, Fraser, blink twice if Ottawa is making you deny the aliens, who support us at the Master of the Universe level, and all our patrons. All your support means the universe to us. So a few months ago, I compiled my top 100 sci-fi movies list. And the list is kind of rough. It's not just sci-fi. It's also sort of space and sort of fantasy, but it's like nerd friendly movies. And it's not 100, it's like 106, because I'm still working on it. And this will be my magnum opus, really. But now I'm going back through the movies and one by one watching them, and not just the movie, but the entire franchise that movie spawned, confirming that they do indeed belong on that list. And so I want to give you an update of 6 movies, franchises, that my wife and I have been watching that are on this list. So first, Ghost in the Shell. And Ghost in the Shell is good. It's very good. And gives you a lot of like really mind-blowing sci-fi ideas, but the actual story itself is fairly thin. There's not a lot that goes on. And I think there's like a lot of meta to it that you want to be aware of when you're watching this. And we watched the live action movie after that with Scarlett Johansson, and it was better than I remembered. And so I'm going to keep Ghost in the Shell on my list. And in my mind, the live action remake is fine. And I recalled hating it. So that's weird. Next up is The Terminator, and we watched the whole Terminator series, and the first movie is terrific. Like, it still just totally holds up. There's like some stop motion action later on in the movie where it is so janky. They did the best they could with what they had, but still, it's a very, very good movie. The pacing, the action, the characters, every part of it, I loved it. And so when I see a movie from the early 80s, 1984, and it still holds up on this list, I'm so impressed. Mad Max. And I have a shameful admission, which is that I had never watched Mad Max. I watched The Road Warrior, I watched Beyond Thunderdome, I'd watched Furiosa, Fury Road, but I never watched Mad Max. And it's great. And you can see George Miller as a director figuring out his ideas about sort of a post-apocalyptic future. It's not even post-apocalyptic future. It's just kind of a Australia running down in the future. And yet there is all these pieces are there. Bombastic action scenes, car crashes, people just doing really unreasonable stunts. No one should expect them to put their lives at risk in the way that they did. And it was surprisingly good. And I'm so glad that I actually finally caught up the whole series. Okay, so that's 3. And I'm going to give you coverage on the next 3 in the second episode of this week's QAs. We'll see you in a couple of days.